Hey everybody. Hope you're all having a good weekend. It's nice to be back. Um, the It's been a little while, been 2 weeks at least, um, and I've been thinking about like how to do better on our game, uh, and I think one of the things I'm learning um, is that. Hi Chris, welcome to the stream. Um, this stuff is really hard. And I've been trying to think about ways that I can make it easier on myself, um, as well as be educational. And I mostly just do this because I like to share what I'm learning. But I feel like on some of the other topics, for example, building building hard hat and elixir, um, rebuilding that from scratch. I knew what I was doing. I'd done it before. I knew the topic really well, um, and so I was able to make decisions um, that had a lot of previous context. Uh, and Similarly for a lot of the things with the tree sitter NIF, um, you know, I had done both Rust code and Elixir code. I knew how NIFs behave. Um, I had a rough idea of what the potential problems were going to be writing it in Rust versus writing it in C or C++. Um, and like that was trodden ground for me. But doing this game thing is untrodden ground. I have followed along with Bevy for a very long time, but never really built anything with it before this. So we're kind of learning things as we go. And One of the things that I think I can do to make this go much more smoothly is to leverage tools that are in the ecosystem rather than trying to build everything from scratch. So what I would like to do today, and I'm sure Chris, you'll give like two enthusiastic thumbs up about this, is we're gonna start to pull in some community crates. Um, the biggest one being uh, for level editing. So we're going to play with LDTK, which again, this is untrodden territory for me. I have not used LDTK before, but we're going to try to make use of it. Follow some of the guides in the crates that integrate with Bevy, um, or the examples at least, and then we'll see what we can do because we've been kind of doing some things very manually with asset loading. I think we can make use of the tile map as opposed to like the packed tile map as opposed to the individual sprites. Um, we can, excuse me, we can also make use of its model of um, laying out the tiles on the screen. Like that, we don't have to do that. We don't have to position each individual one. We don't have to have our own concept for a grid. Um, we can just make the level design, uh, import it. This is hand wavy. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But we can make the level design. We can import it. We can display it on screen in Bevy with like very little work, as far as I can tell. So we're gonna try to do that. I think that will be better than trying to do some kind of random generation. Um, that can be really difficult. And then if we need to do tweaks like different layers of tiles, if we want to make special features of our level or levels, plural, we can do that with the level editor, and we don't have to be concerned with coding all of that. Um, so I think that I'm hoping that will be a level up for us. I also wanted to share a couple things, and maybe we'll start with that. So let me get those up and ready. Um, First thing I wanted to share is this new repo that I just saw came across Reddit today. It's called Daily Bevy. This person, they call them code katas. They're not really coding much, but what they're doing is they're going into the examples in the Bevy repo and doing a deep dive on what particular things do. And one of the most revealing things, and I sort of had an idea of how this worked because I'd looked at it a long time ago, but also I've worked with crates that do similar tricky things with the Rust type system. For example, Axum does some really interesting and tricky things with Rust type system that basically auto implements traits for types that it doesn't even know about yet. Because with generics and traits and stuff like that. And so there's an example in this repo. See awwsmm/daily bevy. I highly recommend you check that out. I'm gonna paste it in the chat if it'll let me. It will not. I have to type it. So this is really good stuff. It deepened my understanding just reading through the 5 or 6 entries that are on here already. So good stuff. And then there was also a new tutorial from the Zymartu Games channel. They updated their, and we'll go back over to Zed here so we can see it. They updated their example game, which I've based a lot of things on in this series. And the big things that I learned in this, and we'll try to implement them today, are the collision detection got a lot more sophisticated. And some of the things that we were struggling with in previous streams about, like, well, where do you do this? Like, what is the where's the responsibility for handling this particular thing? I think they came up with a really great solution, and it's something I'd shied away from before, but event readers and writers. So just to go over this real briefly, they also did some things with game states, which we may want to do, but don't have to jump into right now. So the collision detection is basically the same. It just updates the collider entities. And then handle collisions. Hi, Chris. Handle collisions, instead of like dealing with the side effects of colliding, it just says, I'm going to create events which are X collided with Y. And it pushes those into an event writer. And then you can have lots of different systems recognize those collisions. And so their example is apply collision damage. So they have some additional components. We had already built a health before they even did this in theirs. So we can make use of that, a health component. But it just reads off the collision events, and then it finds it tries to find an entity that has a health component, and then it finds the thing that it collided with if that has a collision damage component. So this would be like, what is the damage of a weapon or colliding with an object that should cause you damage. That's what this component is. And then it applies that to the house. So this is sort of what we were doing before, but we did it in a much more like coupled way. So event readers and event writers are probably something we'll pull into our own code today. And I think it ended up in here in the schedule. No, they have a state. I mentioned game states. Theirs is simple. Are you in the game? Is the game paused? Which is a really nice state to have. And game over. There's some neat things in here about like decorating a system with, only run it if the game state is this. I don't know if you can have nested states, but I suppose if you had like, I suppose it's like a direct match. Excuse me. Yeah, if the state machine is in the current state. So if we wanted to have nested states here, but we could specify the entire value of that, you could potentially do that. They only have 3. We might have something like, I don't know, menu in game, paused, something like that. We'll see what the states are. Um, and then they use this state and next state thing to take particular events and switch between um, states. So this is like building a state machine. Okay. Um, so that's all cool. Let's go back to ours. We will be looking at the asset loader later after we play with LDTK, but I think that we should take care of updating collision detection to be a lot cleaner. Okay, so ours is a bit different than theirs. We have a size and offset for the collider so that we can adjust it to be a different size than the tile of the object. Um, so okay, so let's look at this. We check for intersections between the rectangles, and right, and so then we push. Okay, so this doesn't handle any of the collisions themselves. Um, I think we were doing that in health. Yeah, we have this take damage stuff. We may want to completely rewrite this. This is fine. I think we want to we'll change this to less than or equal to 0 because I think we did health as a U32. So it could be 0. Yeah, and we did saturating sub. Okay, so we're gonna change this around. This is kind of a mess, actually. So let's make a new system here. Handle collision damage, and let's first make those components because I think that in collision, yeah, derive component debug. Collision damage. And since we are doing our health with integers, for better, for worse, let's do damage or amount being a U32. And let's see if we can generate a new. Yep, okay. So I'll just make it easier. Yeah, it's just complaining about that not. Okay, so let's see what they did in terms of the schedule of that collision detection. Okay, so they do the collision detection in this phase, and then they do handle collisions in the update phase, and then apply collision damage after handling collisions. I guess that makes sense. We could probably put ours in the collision um, file as well. I think that makes sense. Okay, so here in collision, I think we did a lot of stuff in combat. Yeah, there's knockbacks. Okay. Okay, and some of our complication here is that we have an immunity period. So if you took damage and right, and that cooldown was optional. So we would need to do that in ours as well. Okay, so let's first start with um, we need to turn these into events. The thing is, I think with the schedule, um, the collision detection happens last, and we want to put handle collision damage here in entity updates. I think that makes sense. Um, so this is sort of like, what am I colliding with this frame? Um, and that just updates those entity or those components, right? And then either in process combat, which I think that we're doing knockbacks, like queuing up the knockbacks in process combat, um, and then we're actually applying it in entity updates. So I think what we need to do is in that first phase, the process combat, um, let's update, and we'll say I'm just going to call it handle collisions because I don't have a better name for it. Process combat. So this is going to do create those events. Okay, and let's see here. So let's go ahead and make that system handle collisions. And this is going to be events, is going to be an event writer. And we're going to have to define a collision event, right? So I don't think it has a derive, but it's just a struct. And we'll put debug on it because we should. And this is going to be entity collided with entity. Okay. And then let's add event. And this is generic, so it gets collision event. Let's get a line return in there. Okay, and we got some other errors, but yeah, we're gonna have to fix that. I'm not sure why it thinks that is not. That's probably because this. Okay, and then we're going to get a we're going to get a query, and then we'll say we just care about colliders, and this is going to be plain borrow. Okay, so this actually, we need the entity as well, right? So in query.iter, let's go ahead and save that, and it's, yeah. Okay, so we will do for collided with in collider dot collisions iter. And then we'll do events dot, is it push? Right. Let's look at the Bevy docs real quick. Event writer. Writer.send. Okay, it's called send. Send. And then we'll have a collision event. And let's, for cleanliness, let's generate a new function on this as well. And then it's easy. Okay, so this doesn't look like much, but I'm sorry, this needs to be a resource. It's not just an event writer. Res mute, right? I think that's how it works. Okay, so it needs to be an event. I guess we do derive event here. Yeah. Okay, it's not a resource. I was wrong. Okay, it's just an event writer. Okay, doesn't need to be cloned. We can replace that with star. No, star, please. Okay. Okay, so this is really dumb. I want to compare what we just wrote to what the other repo did. So look at their handle collisions. Okay, so theirs is slightly different. Theirs is specific to specific types. And this, I think we have something similar to this in our code, where in our other section, where we're like, did we collide with something that is of the same type? And then you skip it. We could do that here. But I don't know if we want to do this yet. Because I think that, like, I'm not sure what we would not want to send events for. Now, in our case, we do have walls that you can collide with, but they should never be damaged. So, and we only care about the thing colliding with it, not the things that are colliding with it, if that makes sense. So we only care about it from the object that's running into the wall's perspective, not from the perspective of the wall. So it might make sense to put with T here. And T is a component. And then we can go up here and let's make this a tuple. And let's do, so we care about the player. And we care about the ghost. Although at some point we'll want to make the enemies more generic. Maybe they'll just have an enemy marker instead of ghost. That's what we started with. And then we care about, similar to what they did in the other example, we care about the weapon. And I think in here it's just dagger, not the best named thing. Dagger. And let's import that. Okay. So we'll only send out events for when these things are colliding with something, um, because these are the things that can, at least for now, um, take or give damage. I think in this case it should be take. So, okay. All right, let's look at this take damage for a moment, um, because this is where we were doing that query. But what we would rather do is specify the amount. Right here, it's just like saturating sub 1, right? We'd love to specify what the damage is. Okay. So let's go and so the player has a collider. I think the player should not do damage on collision. They can only damage with their weapons, so they're not going to have a collision damage component. But the weapon will, right? So let's see, collision damage. Let's make it do 5 for now. And let's go into the ghost and give them some hit points. Though they have 1. Okay, so their health is 1. Let's make it 10, so you like have to hit them more than once. And they should do a collision damage of 5 as well for now. And these actually I should pull out into constants like what we've been doing before. So const ghost collision damage. I just say ghost damage. And that's going to be U32. And let's make it do 5. Ghost health. U32, 10. Okay. And then down here, let's replace that with ghost damage and ghost health. Okay, and let's do something similar in here. So we've got the dagger damage, U32, and we said 5. We can tune that if we don't like it. Interesting. Okay, that's about how often they're going to fire. Okay, so the collision damage is going to be dagger damage. And we also need health in here because we want this to despawn. When it hits an enemy. So there's some questions here we'll have to resolve with what can collide with what. But I think we'll resolve that later, or maybe we already resolved it in collisions or in combat. So we had this doubly parameterized knockback, so a player can knock back a ghost, or a ghost can knock back a player. This is pretty messy as well. All right. Okay, so we decided before that we were going to do um, the oh geez, just want to put parens around that. Thanks. We were going to put the collision damage um, in the entity updates phase. So I'm going to say apply collision damage. Um, and what I don't remember is how we prevented the player from colliding with the dagger. So let's look. Oh right, so is this take damage? I think that this is what we need to redo. So I'm gonna go back. Where did I do that in combat? I'm gonna back out this change because we don't want to do this here. Okay, because we were doing this in health. So this is like right. Okay, so let's redo our take damage, and it's going to read off of those events. So we're going to kind of keep this, but I'm going to comment it out, and we can look at making sure that we get everything correct there. Okay, so we're going to take damage. Again, this is generic on E and T. So T being the thing taking damage, and E being the thing that the thing that is doing the damage. Okay, and then we're going to do. I think it has to be mute. We need an event reader. Collision event. Okay. And then we're going to do. We'll have a query that is a receiver, and that is going to be. And this needs to be mute as well. That's going to be. We just need the health, right? And this has to be of that type. So this is the receiver has to be T. Get this on a new line. And then the enemy damager. This needs to have a collision damage, right? With E. So we're basically, this is like a join. I'm missing something here. Just save that and see what happens. Okay. This does not need to be mute, but we need this to be mute so that we can change the health. Okay, so we're going to events.read. Okay, so this collision is going to be a collision event. And we're going to say let okay. And this is going to be mute health. We're going to say receiver get mute. So note that get mute returns a result of either the item or, it's not there. Get mute of collision dot entity. else continue. So basically this is saying we're going to loop over all the events that have been enqueued, the collision events. And if for this particular event, if the entity that receives the collision is not in this set of types, not it doesn't have health, or it doesn't have this marker component, then we'll just go on. We'll skip. Okay, and so then also we need the damager collision dot collided with. So the thing doing the damage needs to be in this other query. If it's not, we continue. So there are some cases potentially here where the we're also going to have to deal with time, but there's some cases here where we'll probably have events, collision events, with things that don't do damage, and we'll just be skipping over a lot of things that may be colliding that we don't care about. So the other thing that we need to do here is handle handle the health cooldown. So we need to do some of this logic. So let's get the time in here as well, because we're going to have to tick that counter. We were previously doing that here, but yeah. And we'll basically redo that. Okay, so we're ticking the cooldown. Okay, so note that this is this is sort of what we were doing before, but here we were going through all the things that have health and collider. And you can see here that what we're doing in this case is we only care that a collision happened, and then we are getting the things that were collided with if they have health and collision damage, you know, the two things separately. And so it's in the sense that we're starting to decouple what the idea of a collision is with what the effects of colliding with something are. And that's going to be good for longer term, I think. Because if we have other things that can collide, so let's say we do we do terrain destruction or something. That's a sort of collision where you don't care about the health, really. Like, you're just like, well, did these two things that can cause terrain destruction collide with one another? That's probably a better a better abstraction, and you can build that separately and still make use of this event reader over collision events. The other thing we might have a possibility of is this is not something that I have thought about really thoroughly, just as off the cuff, but if we had like doorways to different levels, or we had portals between different spots in the same level, like that would be a collision, and you wouldn't want the player to take damage from that collision, and it would be a different kind of handling of these events. So multiple possibilities there. Okay, so I'm trying to remember what we did here. Okay, so in this logic, we were saying if the excuse me. Okay. If the if there is a cooldown, this is interesting. I don't know if that we did. I think on ghosts we didn't put a cooldown in their health. Right. So there's none. There's no cooldown there. Um, okay. I wanna talk through this logic and maybe we can figure it out again. Okay. So if any of the things it collided with were an enemy, so in other words, going through all their collisions, and if this query, the enemy, and it has a collider, um, if it contains that, so this is similar to that other query we were doing in our event-based version, then it's going to look at the health cooldown. If there is one and the cooldown just finished, we reset it. If there isn't one, then we replace it with a timer. Um, I think this had to do with the state where. Okay, and then if it is not finished, then we continue. Right. So um, the interesting thing about this is I feel like we just added the ghost health, but I kind of want to make. What do we do in the player? Right. So they have a starting player starting health. Um, I want to give the ghosts health, but I don't necessarily want them to have a damage cooldown. So I'm not sure if this logic will work. Um, what might be interesting is to see if we can initialize a timer in the finished state. And then if it's none, then we don't. Yeah, let's look at timer in here. Okay, so we could set the elapsed time. When we initialize it, because the tick, right, is how we detect how long it's been since we triggered that last time. But if it starts in the finished state, um, and we're taking damage, yeah. Okay, so let's see about making a new constructor for health. With damage cooldown. And this will be amount U32, and then cooldown being F32. And what we're going to do is we're going to extract out let's see, let mute timer new cooldown, and I think we did timer mode once, yeah. And then we'll say timer set elapsed duration from seconds. Cooldown. This will mean that it's at the end already, so that yeah, that's standard time duration. Okay. Oh, this is not from seconds. From seconds F32. That's what I want. What were we doing here? Okay, so we want timer from seconds here. Right. Okay. So that means that what we can do is deal with this damage cooldown when we're spawning the player, and then give the ghost and the dagger no damage cooldown. So that'll make this a little bit less sketchy. And then we're resetting the timer if it exists. So okay, so we tick it. And then here, if it's finished, we do cooldown.reset. So that means we can apply damage again. If it just finished, we reset the cooldown when we can apply. So otherwise we continue, and I think that this can probably be, and if there is no cooldown, then we always apply damage. I think this makes sense. We get the same functionality here, but we're never putting a cooldown on something that should not have one. Okay. So now that we know we should apply damage, because either there is no cooldown, or the cooldown just finished, right? We can do health.amount, saturating sub. So we're doing the same thing as before because we're using U32, not floats. We can probably change that later without too much work. And then we'll do damage dot amount. And we have to do health.amount equals. Okay, I think this is and this is a little bit easier to read than our previous one because had collisions and managing health kind of smashed together. Um, and so this should be better. I want to put, because we had to rethink what the heck was going on here. I want to put that up in here as well. So we'll put some commentary here about what this means. Has a damage cooldown so that they cannot be insta killed, and so that knockbacks. Oops. So that knockbacks feel coherent with the rate of damage. For projectiles and enemies, this cooldown should be none. If the cooldown has not finished, if the cooldown exists and has not finished, we skip. So one of the problems with this potentially is that we're going to have one event for everything, and we'll potentially tick this cooldown in the same frame multiple times. So let's say like two enemies or enemy projectiles come in and hit the player on the same frame. We're going to potentially tick this cooldown timer more than once. So let's look again at this. So what happens when you reset? Okay, it just resets the timer. Okay. I think we probably need to check if the timer was just reset. This is getting a little complicated. One way we could do this slightly differently is to make the timer not be part of the health component, but be like a damage cooldown component, which we insert. The problem with that is it would be delayed, or it would be deferred until the next application of. It'd be essentially like an immunity component, which means you could still do damage from two things in the same frame. but you wouldn't. You could skip over applying damage if the immunity thing was on the entity. Okay, let's think about that. So maybe what we do. Let's see here. So instead of this cooldown, I was thinking we would do something like this, but um, maybe what we do instead of timer, it's an F32, right? And then we make a new component. Immunity. What's this game supposed to be? I'm sorry, I've been coding a lot. I haven't been showing it. It's like a Vampire Survivors type game, like a roguelike dungeon. You have enemies flying toward you. You regularly fire projectiles. You try to dodge the enemies, not take damage, that sort of thing. So good question. So this will be a cooldown timer. So and then what we can do is make a separate system for this. Struct, please. Let's say like let's call it damage cooldown for lack of a better word. I was gonna say immunity is kind of what it is, but so then this, we don't deal with the timer here. We just say some cooldown. And then here, we're not going to do, this is not a timer anymore. But what we can do up here is say we only care about the receiver not having, the ones that don't have a damage cooldown. And then we're going to have commands in here as well to add this damage cooldown to the to the world. I've never seen a game being made in Rust. Yeah, well, I'm new at writing games, but there's some actually pretty prominent ones. What was the name of it? There's sort of a world builder type of game being built that I just saw the other day. But do check out the subreddit Rust Game Dev. There's a lot of neat announcements and tools and stuff on there. Okay, so we're gonna scrap this bit, and what we're gonna say is right. So we're gonna say if let cooldown cooldown as ref. So if there's a duration in there, what we want to do is commands entity insert, and let's generate a new function. Except it's not going to take a cooldown this timer. It's going to be like this. We're going to say let cooldown timer from seconds. Cooldown. And then we'll have something separate that a separate system that that ticks the damage cooldowns and removes them if they are expired. So timer mode once, right? Okay. So yeah, that's fine. Duration. Okay, so basically instead, oh, it's collision.entity, sorry. And this probably needs to deref. Fine. Okay. So what we're saying here is if there is a cooldown, and actually I think I want to put this after. And this, even though we may try to be inserting this component onto the entity multiple times, if it's being hit by multiple things, we will effectively only insert one, because you can only have one type of component of the same. You can have only one instance of the same type of component on each entity. So there's no harm in doing this multiple times. A little bit wasteful, but if it becomes a problem, we can do that later. Okay, so now we're going to have to make a system. Okay, so that's process combat. Let's add it to this is in the update. We're going to say tick damage cooldown. In set, in game. This is going to be entity updates. Okay, so let's make that system. So we basically finished our take damage system. Let's talk it over real quick. So we have commands for adding that damage cooldown. The other, the interesting thing is we could have made a took damage event and inserted cooldowns or whatever. That could be an interesting way to do it and have an event writer. But okay, so we read all the collision events. We're looking for components where the thing that is receiving the collision has a health component, and it is of this type, but it doesn't have a damage cooldown. So we're skipping over the ones that are on cooldown, right? And then the thing doing the damage has to have a collision damage component, and it's of this type. So we're definitely restricting what can run into what. And we saw with and those are two generic parameters on this function. And I can actually remove the time because we're not doing that anymore. And you can see when we set up the system, we say the player can receive collision damage from the ghost, and the ghost can receive collision damage from the dagger. And then let's do the tick damage cooldown system. And here we're going to need a commands as well. And we're going to need a and this is damage cooldown. And we're going to need the time. So the thing I'm trying to get around with this is that in our previous version about 10 minutes ago, we were ticking the timer every time it took damage, even though time had not elapsed. So in this case, as a separate component from the health, which, I mean, I guess we could have done that as a separate system. I kind of actually like the idea of a different component. But yeah, my cat's up on the desk. Okay, so in here we need to do for cooldown in query.itermute. So this is going to give us all of the things that are on damage cooldown. So in other words, they have been, it's in there. So we're going to do cooldown dot. This is going to give us, that component. Cooldown dot cooldown. And we need to get the entity as well, because what we want to do is remove that component if it has finished. Okay, so this is the pretty standard, and this needs to be mute. This is the pretty standard way to tick a timer over. And then if we say if cooldown dot just finished, then we want to get the entity remove that's not what I want. It's the opposite of insert. Let's look at the Bevy docs for this. Okay. So if we do commands and entity, this gives us entity commands. So we were previously inserting a component. We want to remove that component. Removes a bundle of components. Okay, so it just didn't look like it in the docs. It's parameterized. So we can say remove and give it a damage cooldown. Okay. I think that's clear enough. It's basically like keep ticking until it finished and then remove it on the next pass. Okay, yeah, we're not using that. We're not using collider anymore because we don't care. And then let's move this to the player, because we're going to go over here, and I'm going to prefix it with player damage. And then the player is going to have a health with damage cooldown. Player damage cooldown. Okay, so that ties it all together. We have our new constructor for the health component, and that cooldown is an F32 rather than the actual timer. I think that's a little bit better. It decouples those things. And then when you take damage, it's responsible for inserting the damage cooldown if that was set. And then for the ghosts, they don't have a damage cooldown. They can take as much as we can deal. Okay, that feels pretty good. New tricks, event readers, inserting or removing components. So the next thing I want to do is make sure that our game is still working. We've done a lot of code without showing the thing. Is there a cooldown on the attack speed for the player? Yes. So the player, I'll show you that real quick. It has a weapon, and it has an attack cooldown, and that's repeating. So what happens on throw weapon is that we loop through the the player's weapons. And then we spawn daggers. So note the dagger does not have a damage cooldown either. We spawn daggers in each of the 4 directions. You'll see when it starts up if it's still working. I hope it's still working. Because we changed quite a bit. And then we'll look at LDTK with the 45 minutes or so we have left of my planned time. Okay, so no, the player is running into the dagger there, but we are not. Okay, so we have some problems with. They should not be. They should take 2 hits. But let's see about whether our knockbacks still work. Yep, knockbacks still work. You know, we're not displaying any how much health does the player have, but let's just let him get hit a lot. Yeah, okay, then so we panicked actually. We're gonna have to look at what that panic was. Okay, we probably have some system ordering problem here. It's saying there's no entities in this player velocity. So yeah, so actually we need to look at the right, it would panic here. So if the player is being despawned, you know, we can deal with that with some game states later. I think that this is not something to be concerned with right now. I'll put a note in here. If the player has been despawned from losing all its health, this will panic. So we need to solve this by changing game states or guarding this access. Right, so this is designed to panic. The idea being we want it to panic right now because we think that there's only one player ever, which there is. But if our player has died, then this will panic. Okay. Cool. So that's I think a good stopping place. We refactored collisions into events and handle damage cooldowns separately from taking damage. Cool. All right, let's look at LDTK. Thanks for coming, Chris. All right. I have never used LDTK before, so this will be interesting. I was looking at the tools here. One thing that we can do starting out is we've been pulling in our sprites individually in individual files. It's really inefficient. The entire set of tiles is not that big as a single file, and it's just better to use tile maps. So thanks for coming. Imaz was taken. Congratulations on getting your first job. I hope you enjoy being in the industry. I don't know if you're doing game dev or if you're doing other kinds of dev, but thanks for coming. All right, so I'm gonna use the packed one. This one has borders around it. I don't know that that's necessary. I think LDTK can use any of them. And let's open that up. Yeah, Tomac Pap is fine. So they are, I guess it either detected it or expected it to be 16 pixels. They're not spaced, and they don't have an atlas padding. Um, what is this? Linking an enum to this tile set, you can be able to mark tiles using values from this enum. Okay, so we can say collision information, so wall block, slope, left, right, thin platform, etc. Special material, water, lava, footstep sound, metal, wood. Okay, so this is putting like attributes on the tiles. Um, yeah. How do I pan? Okay, so so you can see in here the tiles that we used previously. We used some of these. Um, there's different kinds of dirt, crates, or characters, doors, and things. Um, like minecart tracks. Oh, those are like shields. Okay. Um, I don't know what this is yet, but let's look at it. Let's figure this out. Let's call it tiny. This needs to be identified. Letters, numbers, scores. Okay. Let's call it tiny dungeon. Dungeon. Because that's what it's called. Okay. What the tags are for. Used to freely organize your enums. Okay. Let's look at enums. Your enemy types, items, states, etc. It does have, yeah, some docs. I have glanced at them, and I'm going to poke around for a little bit, and then I'm going to jump to the docs when I can't figure anything out. Okay, so let's make an enum, and let's use the tiny dungeon tile set. And let's say this is going to be I don't know, entity kind. That's a bad name. This needs to have underscores. I think I'm going to begin to hate that real quickly. Okay, so there could be it's like a player, and let's add enemy, and let's add terrain, and let's add weapon. And I kind of need to have the tile map open to know what else is in there. And maybe there's a background, so like we can identify those separately as things that are on the that are not things you can collide with. I don't know. Let's try that. And let's go back over to our tile set, entity kind, and then so let's choose players. Okay, and then our enemies can be, and like the bad wizard. I don't know what those are. Those are really weird looking. And let's add that dude as a player too. Maybe we can let you choose your player. It's a rat? Okay, yeah. I guess it is a rat. I was like, what? It is so weird. uh, First capital snake case. Okay, and then we'll have some background things. So like all these dirt tiles are backgrounds. That's you know, and like this. Well, maybe not that, because that's a wall. Um, then we have a lot of terrain tiles. It's a rat coming at you with all 4 feet, like a forward, like a cat. Yeah, I see it now, but at first I was like, this looks like a claw inside of a, you know, something else. It was weird. Okay, so those are all terrain tiles. These are terrain tiles. And when I mean terrain, it's like something you can collide with, right? Um, those are terrain. Um, some of these are questionable, like this, and maybe these could be kind of backgrounds. Um, like I think, sorry, my cat keeps getting on the keyboard. I think all these train tracks, minecart tracks, should be background. So like you can walk on top of them. Maybe this barrel is a terrain. Um, and it looks like there's some other things in here that we could make use of. Like, let's mark up all the weapons. I'm just calling them weapons, even if they're like a potion. We may not use them. Um, and let's see. Okay, and this is terrain. And let's just mark all these doors, these portals and things as terrain. This looks like a fence or something. Yeah. Um, I think we need a few more kinds here. We probably need like decorations or something. Um, things that you, let's go ahead and mark those as background. Things that you wouldn't, don't necessarily need collisions with. Right, weapons, terrain, those are things you can collide with. Um, yeah, and then we'll have like, you know, we have some marker things. So let's go switch back to the save. Okay, so save that real quick. By the way, I put this in our project. I'm not sure how to load it yet. We'll hopefully figure that out before the stream is over. Let's go back to our enums. So we need a new value here, and this is going to be like decal. So those like the cursor and the scratch things, um, and then let's just have like decoration as one, um, and then we can go and say like these are decals, and then let's see. So decorations might be like these things. Let's see what isn't marked. Like that's a decoration. We'll make the little chair, the table, and the anvil decorations. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to use those yet, but let's see. The only thing we don't have marked is that. I feel like that's terrain, because that'd be like spikes you could walk onto. I think we have basically everything marked. Cool. Okay, so our tiles are 16 pixels by 16 pixels. They're giving us a 256 by 256. That's really tiny compared to like we were doing like 500 by 500 or something. Um, no, 100 by 75 on our grid. So, um, that would be like 1600 pixels by I can't do the math. 1600 by like 900 pixels or something. Oops. Yeah, so like 16 times 75, 1200. So 1600 by 1200. So let's, where are we? Current level settings. Let's say 1600, fine, by 1200. Okay. So okay. So there's our map as we designed it. Um, so let's look at layers. Let's see what kinds. So an integer grid, grids of integer numbers. It can be used to mark collisions in your levels or various other information. It must be used to render automatically to tiles using dynamic rules. Okay. We might want to define our our background as an integer grid, and then the integer can be the tile to pick. But that may be actually this. So let's look at the docs real quick. Okay. Okay, draw, erase, space, move the zoo. Okay. All right. Go to the website. Let's look at the interface. Layers. Okay. So let's look at integrated layers in this tutorial. Each file has an associated custom color. Okay. This feels like more like drawing a mask. Right, okay. Left click to draw, right click to erase, shift click to draw a rectangle, shift to fill. Okay. Let's look at tile layers. Tile layers can contain bitmap images painted over a grid. This is kind of what we want, I think. So we created a tile set, we select an atlas image, set the tile size, and check below if it works. Open the layers panel, create a tile layer. Use the tile picker in the corner, left click to paint. Okay, so similar. Okay, let's start with a tile layer. Layers. Let's create a new tiles layer. And then we're going to call this our background layer. Okay. Grid size, offsets, yep, fine. Okay. Grid size is 16 pixels. Yep. All right. So now we can go and like pick the dirt and fill the entire thing with dirt. And then we could draw walls. Yeah, this is going to be way better than what we were doing before. So we could draw it's interesting. That's I don't know what kind of wall we want to draw here, really. I think we want like See, this is kind of the top of a wall. And I'm not sure. Those sort of look like stairs, but they could be, you know, bricks. They aren't really named. Let's look real quickly at the tile sheet. No, that's not it. Tiled. So there's this TMX file which I saw LDTK does support. Um, so there's some numbers and things in here. Okay, objects, carts. So like they've already sort of defined. I don't know what this goop is, but okay. Yeah. Funny they put TSX on that, and that's actually something for React. React with TypeScript. Okay. Yeah, in previous times, like there was the Kenny also has a tanks tile set that I've used before, and it actually had a mapping between like the name. Yeah, I know, Chris. CSV inside XML. It had a mapping between the name of the file and like what it was for, like a human readable name. That would have been really useful in this case, but okay. So we've got some dirt. Um, and let's just start drawing some things. I think on the edges. Maybe we can zoom in so we can see what it looks like more closely. But I feel like because there's this dirt on here, this looks like a you can see down below. So like this is a short wall, is what it looks like to me. This is sort of like a pen, and what we want is a tall wall. I don't honestly remember what we picked previously. So we're just gonna have to do something. All right, let's just take the bricks, start painting. Oops. Here. So we can get bricks. Can I scroll, please? Here, zoom out. Oh, that's not what I want. I'm still learning the key combos for this. Move the view. Space. Okay, so there we go. And we are selecting this guy. Let's paint the wall all the way over to next to the edge. And then let's do like one of those here. So we get the corner and one of those here. Okay, pretty big. And I'm going to put this here. That doesn't look right, I don't think. This is supposed to be like the end of a wall or something. The other thing is there's no like border. You want something almost like that tile at the base here, but then you would need one of those to match up. One of the cool things here is we could like insert some windows in places, some banners. So it's much more like decorating and less like coding. I want to say I was using this for the outside walls. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay. And then we do the same for that, for the right side. I'm sorry, this is really tiny and you probably can't see it on stream. But because our map is so huge, I have to do this. uh, okay. And then I want to say we're using this as the top of the wall on the bottom. That makes sense. We could put this fence thing in instead, I suppose. But let's just use this for now. And there's going to be a problem here in that there's no. I mean, may need. Yeah, that's not going to work either. Um, we need something at the bottom here that makes sense. I want to say we were using this, but then that would have conflicted in that spot. One of the challenging things with using tile maps like this is if you don't know exactly how they're supposed to be used, you can be doing a lot of guesswork. Okay. Yeah, is it not the other group to the right of that one? The problem is these are only corners. I mean, I could do this, I suppose. That makes sense. And then do this one going across. Yeah, okay. Good call, Chris. Thank you. And then let's pan over here. Okay, we're almost over to the right. One thing that's going to be interesting to find out is whether we can figure out, custom collision boxes for these things. We'll have to see. Okay, so that's basically what we have before, except that we didn't have the brown background as a tile. Okay, so let's save that. The thing is, I may want to promote these walls to another layer. And maybe what we'll do is, I think we need to make let's make an integer grid, and this will be walls. Boundary, like things you can't collide with. Okay. The thing is, I don't know that we need. Do we need a tile set? Oh, so you can pick different enum. You can use an enum to pick different tiles. Above cells containing collision values. Okay. So one wall. This is probably not the best way, and I apologize. I'm still learning here. Values, interface icons. Nope. One thing I'm not sure about is whether this layer needs to have whether it needs to have the entire grid filled, or whether we can just put it on different spots. I'm thinking it's just different spots. let's just start with this. Okay. And let's paint the walls. And this will be easy. 1 pixel down the right. 1 pixel across the bottom. 1 pixel across the left, and 1 pixel across the top. Okay. Okay, so we have the basic level that we had before, but okay, so I did save that. Now, what I'm not sure about, and I think we'll just look at the crate. Yeah, this one is dumb. I mean, initial cap snake case. I almost want to do this. Let's do full layer case. The full uppercase is going to drive me batty. Yeah, confirm. Rename all that junk. Okay. Cool. So there's that TMX thing. Okay, let's look at, and I think I had this open on my browser. Yeah, so there's this crate that Chris, who's in the chat, had alerted me to, Bevy ECS LDTK. So it takes the LDTK that you've worked with in the editor, and it imports it, and it uses ECS tile map. So all these tiles get entities. You can see some examples down here. Like that stuff's pretty cool. So what I want to look at is, so this is their platformer example. I want to look at how do you load it, how do you connect it to your systems, and so forth. Okay, there's a book. Start with there. Okay, so I did this. Identity of the player and goal. Okay. Int grid value of the walls. So they're doing similar thing, importing a tile set. So we did an int grid layer for the walls. That's good. Okay, and then it looks like they're doing some dynamic rules for auto tiling things. Maybe this is better if I work through this off stream, so that we can come back with something useful. The main thing I want to look at is, what do you do when you've drawn something and then you want to pull it into your code? So we didn't add an entity layer. Yeah. Yeah, there are examples in the repo too. It might be worth looking at the code examples real quick. Okay. And their idea is like, this is you're trying to get this entity player, because we haven't defined any game entities in the editor right now, because we're spawning them randomly, right? Okay, so let's look at what you do in Bevy. All right, so we're going to go in here, and we're going to do some of the stuff that they're recommending. So we're going to cargo add Bevy ECS LDTK. I'm hoping it's compatible with Bevy 0.12. We'll find out. Okay, and so we will want to do this. Okay, so they're using, that's interesting. We may need to do that later. Okay. We're going to add that in here, and then we will. So we did all of our own asset loading junk. Let's add plugins. And what do they say? LDTK plugin. Okay. Uh-oh. Let's rebuild. Probably didn't need to rebuild all of that, but if it's not compatible, that's a problem. Okay, so we are already done the camera. Okay, and that's how you load that. And it's going to take forever. If they haven't published it, there is a version with 0.12. Yeah, so maybe what we need to do is switch this to let's see if they've updated that in their cargo toml. Theirs does work with 0.12. So let's look at the version on docsrs and see ECS LDTK. Let's see what it. Yeah, this one depends on Bevy 0.11. So we need to get the Git version. That is not surprising to me. Okay. And what is their version on Git? They still say 0.8. Okay. And I haven't done this in so long, I've forgotten. Right, okay. Just copy that. Revision. And we want to pin this so that we don't get drift for now. This is a version from 5 days ago. That'll work. And yeah, we need to bail. Okay, so I need to override that as well. It looks like they're depending on this. And yeah, I need to put this in my cargo toml, it looks like. Because even though we're not directly using this in our crate, we need to tell it, hey, use the overridden version for now. Honestly, I could probably put this in my patch as well. That would mean that when we want to go to a released version, we can just drop that. Yeah, so there now it's pulling in the main branch instead of trying to get it from crates.io. And we're going to recompile the world. I should have done that before I should have looked at the versions before I tried to do cargo clean. That was a mistake. Okay. Now that we're in the process of doing that, let's go back here and look at their docs again. The book. Okay. So we add the LDTK plugin. Okay, so it's built now. And we need to do this. And I think we'll do it in here. This is load assets, but startup. Well, load levels for now. Let's do that, and then we'll make a new one. Asset server. I might at some point look at doing. Okay, so this is interesting. They spawn it after the camera. I don't know that that matters for us, because in the camera we're doing this on startup as well. We just have decoupled it. So this is probably going to break things, but I'm going to paste in their example, and we're going to do levels basic. And we need to import the prelude. I could have put this in a separate file. That might be smart for now, because we were doing all this goop in here. I felt like the right place to put it. Okay, so we load that. We need to insert a level selection resource. Okay. Yeah, let's make a new one. Yep. Rename that file, please. Okay. Because I think that that's actually the wrong place to put this. So we might even be, depending on how it works, we might even be getting rid of asset loader. We'll see. Okay, so let's move this in there. And get rid of that. Okay. The reason I want to do this is we can have other kinds of assets that aren't sprites. Maybe we want to load sounds or something like that. Um, and I didn't want to conflate the world definition with those other things. So, yeah, I need to put mod levels in here. So I want to do app dot insert resource level selection. What do they do? Level selection index 0. And then we will do add systems to startup load levels. Okay. So yeah, this is making sure that we select the first level that we put into our world definition here. Okay, so the interesting thing here is that we will want to change the image plugin to use nearest probably, so we don't get blurry. But I think that'll change the way our game looks, which is fine. But this is saying select the first level out of the world file, and then it draws. Okay. So let's see if we can get that drawing. It's going to conflict with our other stuff, but that's okay. We can figure out what to do with that later, and we're about to run out of time. So I wanted to just see if this works. We're going to have to add this plugin to the levels plugin. Okay, so we can remove that from asset loader because it's not using it. No big deal. Okay, let's run. Yeah, so the weird thing is here, we drew that int layer. That's interesting. So it's displaying what I thought were going to be just values. But you can see the dirt. You can see the dirt being displayed, but we're not getting the walls because this one is on top. So we might need to do some work in the editor there. You can see our original walls are still here. We have some work to do. But I think this is a good place to stop. And I will teach myself a little bit, learn from their tutorials about this stuff, and then we can start to integrate the level editor into the systems that we already have. And it'll probably just be a matter of, for example, these reading this information and interpreting it in a way that makes sense, like this sort of stuff. So yeah, and then we can connect those things. So thank you all for coming. Thank you again, Chris, and Imaz was taken, who has left us, for interacting so much. It's starting to feel like I'm getting better at this, and I appreciate all of your help. And we'll continue to work on this and see see what we can build and have some fun. So that's pretty cool. Thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next week, I hope. I'll probably do it earlier next week, given the Super Bowl is next week. So see you then.